Welcome to Scalable Insights. I'm Larry Dillon. I'm the CEO of the Wendover Corporation / InsightPRM. We are here to bring you the best ideas to help you scale your business. Today, I am thrilled to have with us all the way from Cambridge, England, a good friend of mine, David Parry. David and I have worked together on an amazing project in the 90s called Technology Marketing Reports that just skyrocketed and had a great time. David is in the consulting business. He helps companies that are struggling really break away from that. And but before I butcher exactly what you do, David, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and what you're doing today?
Yeah, thanks, Larry. So it's a great pleasure to be here. I mean, we've as you say, we've been on each other a long time now, and so my background has been university, school teacher, wannabe rock star at one point. You know, the long hair,
Nice.
but then into business in manufacturing, in pharmaceuticals, but mostly marketing, and then into manufacturing where I got involved in sales. You know, nobody goes to university to study sales. It kind of we happen to fall in that direction, and then with much bigger companies, but still in manufacturing. And then in the early 1990s, I joined a conglomerate who bought and sold businesses, and I became part of their acquisitions team, and that's kind of where I learned what I do today. Where they were buying and selling businesses. I had to learn how to make a business grow, and somebody else would take cost out. Then, of course, you and I met in the back end of the 90s, and we were doing the same thing. So whereas in the previous company, it was all about building a company and selling it. In our world, it was about building a company and making it grow beyond. So yeah, and then that's brought me to what I'm doing today.
And David's been, so we work together on Technology Marketing Reports. And as I said, that was just a phenomenal situation. We went from 2 employees to 200 employees in 18 months, all around the world. You know, we were in London to Los Angeles. It was a great time. And then after that, one of our customers made David an offer he couldn't refuse. And so David started his consulting business that you have now. So let's jump in. So David's done what we're going to talk about. This is a series of podcasts, and you definitely want to go tune in when you see this particular series with David Parry. He's done these turnarounds.
Oh gosh.
How many times in the last 20 years?
12, 14, 15 times.
Crazy numbers. Yeah. So let's start off. This is the first podcast in this series. Again, the results that you've gotten are mind-blowing. So let's talk about the first one. Go ahead.
Just one thing, though, before we do that, we'll do that in a second, Larry. The one thing I should say is that what we need to understand is when I started working with you, it was a huge step change for me in both in learning and what I do. So you can imagine that prior to that, I was working in big companies. I was in a corporate environment. We were buying and selling businesses. It was big company politics, big company management. And then when I decided to leave and then joined you, and I shall never forget, coming over here, walking the streets of New York, doing flybys in skyscrapers in New York. It was completely alien to my life. So I went from the glass ceiling, from the corporate world,
right,
down to the shop floor. And I should never forget you saying, are you making money? Not making money, making on the telephone. And it was so, but for me, that was such a fundamental change and learning, which I then brought back into the UK and applied. So everything before that had been, I learned about lean manufacturing in my manufacturing world. And I tell people these days that what I then did in sales was applied lean manufacturing principles into a sales environment. That's fundamentally what I do. What I learned from working with you guys was the reality of doing that on the street floor, and actually making the calls and doing the walking the streets and meeting with people and doing the pitches and learning how to do all of that. So that then gave me a new foundation that made what I was then doing in terms of consulting far more practical and effective. So the first company I went to work with after we'd met was a technology company. They were about 500 million sterling, so maybe $700 million business. But it was storage, so it was IBM storage in the main. So it was a sort of high volume, low margin business. But within the business, they had a £10 million managed services business. And this managed services business had been around for, I think, maybe 3 years, and it wasn't going anywhere. And the owner of the group hated salespeople with a passion, with a real passion. He hated, thought sales guys were a bunch of wasters, and we didn't really do anything to earn our money. However, and so I pitched to help this business. They just had 12 salespeople, £10 million business.
Oh, I didn't realize this. So you were working for the big part of the business.
No, I was a consultant.
Or you were a consultant.
I was a consultant, and I went in on a pitch. I went in originally on a pitch to sell for a three-week coaching program to turn these sales guys around. And the pitch was hilarious because I went there and there were two of my competitors in the same room, in the boardroom, and we were all presenting and pitching for this business. So
at the same time?
At the same time, against each other.
I love it.
So I had my turn, then somebody else had their turn.
That's crazy. I did not know this.
But I'd done my research before I went into this pitch, and I'd learned about the company. I'd met some people. I got close to some of the senior people in the company. And so I'd begun to understand what their issues were, what their problems were, and why this company wasn't performing. So it was flat. It was just 10 million, that was it. And I remember, I should never forget, when I went into my pitch, they had a whiteboard, and I just wrote on the whiteboard, £86,000. I just wrote £86,000. That was it. Didn't say a word. I just left the number on the board. Then I carried on pitching to this company. And
they're looking at the 86,000.
They looked at the 86,000.
What the hell is that?
What the hell's that? Yeah, exactly. And so anyway, so I went through my pitch, and it was a fairly grueling experience. Anyway, so then I sat, and then my competitors went in. Anyway, I got the pitch, obviously, and at the end they said, "Well, what's this £86,000?" I said, "That's the cost for you guys every time your sales guys go out and don't do a deal."
Whoa!
And so it was
missed opportunity.
It was a winner, exactly, missed opportunity.
Wow!
So then I got to I got to work with the company. So what started to be a three week engagement ended up being an eight year engagement, but in different companies, not in the same business. Yeah,
right.
So in that business, the core thing for me, like I said, the owner hated the sales guys, but the salespeople.
So stop for a second. So when you say the owner hated the sales guys, and now then the sales are flat.
Yeah.
Is there a correlation between that?
Yeah, that's why.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, this is a call out. If anybody's a leader, like a CEO, business owner, or head of a division, like if you think sales are terrible, that sales doesn't matter, you're going to get that result.
Exactly
like it matters so much, like what's in your gut, because that translates through the whole company. Yeah. And man, what a way to start off your consulting business. All right, so go ahead. So,
but you're absolutely right. But the key thing, Larry, is that it's if that's happening, the key is understanding why is that happening. Why is it that my sales are flat? Why is it I've got 12 sales guys. They're clear. They're not sat around doing nothing. They're not playing golf every Friday. They're not generally speaking, they're not. So the first thing is to understand, what are they doing? What are they doing with their days? Who are they calling? What knowledge and skill have they got in the way they're doing it? So for me, this was a distribution business. So these guys were channel salespeople. Yeah, so 12 channel salespeople. I'll come on to the distribution in a minute. So the sales team itself were a mixture of, middle of the road, no great superstars, but not really too many at the bottom end either. But they weren't measured, they weren't controlled. There was no KPIs. There was no real structure to it. There was no motivation, because they'd lost that that passion, that desire to work as a team and grow this business. So we set about basic sales. Sales processes, measurement, and so on.
Yeah, let me just stop for a second. Yeah. So for the sales measurement, it's so important because I think there's if somebody kills it, they work really hard, they bump up the sales, and nobody notices because no one's measuring. Yeah. Shame on you. Yeah. I mean, it's bad enough you're not measuring the ones that are underperforming, but shame on you for the ones that perform because it's so little effort to say, my God, David, this month you're ahead 15% of any other month. It's a record month for you. That's all the guys at the top.
The motivation.
They just need that little, it's the easiest thing to do. But if you're not measuring it, and so many companies don't measure these results. And
but if you don't measure, Larry, how can you improve anything? If I don't know, if you don't know what their call ratio is, if you don't know where their conversion ratios is, you don't know how long their sales cycle is, you don't know how well they're doing a demo. If you don't know those things, if they're not tracked and measured, how on earth can you hope to improve it? You can't. Yeah. And that's why I say for me, it's like the lean manufacturing in the sales environment. So the starting gate is to understand what are those measures? What are the KPIs? Right. So what is their sales process? So what do they need to do? When do they need to do it? Who do they need to talk to? And this business was classic where, because of what they were selling, so on the one hand, it was an IT solution. They were selling managed data over the wire. But in the same breath, they were also selling to the finance people. So you couldn't sell their solution. It was a managed service, subscription service. You couldn't sell just to the IT people. You had to get to the IT guy, to the finance guys as well. And you couldn't just sell to the finance guys. So one of the things in the sales process was to make sure that the salespeople actually talked to both. And, there were many times that, when you talk to sales guys, say, yeah, we're going to close this deal. It's going to happen this month. You say, well, have you met Fred, the finance director? Well, no, not yet. So, well, it's impossible. You can't sell it unless you do that. So the first thing is to understand what it is they're supposed to be doing. What are they doing? Where are the gaps in between their activity? And then once you've got that, then you can look at incrementally improving the performance of those sales guys. So once you understand that they're, to go from from a proposal into a negotiation with the customer, they're converting 80% of it into the next stage. And they say, well, okay, so how do I get that to be 82%? What is it that I can do with that salesperson in terms of their knowledge or their skill or the activity or the questioning in order to improve it? And incrementally, that's how it works. So that was one part of it. So the first part of it was getting these 12 people working together in a structured way so that we understood what they needed to do, when they needed to do it. Now, the whole point about this business, of course, is that they were a distribution business. So they had about 1,000 resellers on the storage side, on the main IBM storage side. Now, the thing is about IBM storage business is it's broad-lined. It's high volume, very low margins. The nature of the sales process is quite different from trying to sell a complex solution sell, which is what the managed services business was. So one of the reasons why it hadn't grown was because they were trying to sell this complex solution in a broad line sales scenario, so broad line distribution. So we then set about saying, well, of these 1,000 or so resellers, which ones are the kind of resellers that we think can sell this complex solution? So we went through it. We found about 10 companies, and they were small, they were lean, they were hungry, they wanted to grow, they wanted to learn. So we took these people, and then eventually I think we ended up with 30 resellers, and we trained them. We trained them in everything. We trained them in exactly the same way that we would the salespeople. So we coached them on their sales processes, on their selling skills. We coached them on, we had role play, all kinds of stuff with the distribution sales teams. We trained them on how to manage their businesses, because some of them were very small businesses. So we'd find people coming to help them grow their business. So we became a core support for those distribution guys. So we built a family of salespeople and distribution companies. The net result of that business was we went from just over 10 million to 25 million in 2 years with 60 million of forward order contracts. So even if we closed the door at the end of 2 years, they'd have had £60 million worth of business. Absolutely amazing growth at something like a 65% gross margin, 18% EBITDA. Incredible. And it was really exciting. It was good to see, see that kind of... So that was my first... After we worked together, that was my first experience of helping a company grow and turn around.
That's amazing. So in the... And again, David's done this like 14 or 15 times in the last 20 years, and very similar results in the other studies, the other cases that we're going to talk about. So in this case, so for you, the key was generating those additional proposals, was activity, I guess, within the distributors, keeping connected to the distributors. So the more energy you put into helping the distributors then produced leads for your guys, because they would bring deals to you. Is that the case?
Yeah, sort of. So we had a combination of referral business, as we call it, so that where the distributor simply brought people to our sales team. We'd also have business where the distributor would go forward and manage that customer, but with our sales guys walking alongside them and helping them do the deal. So our guys would go in to help them close the deal, and then they would manage the customer thereafter. But the key thing, I think, looking back on it, Larry, and it's happened many times before. I mean, the problems that you get, the challenges you get in sales, really they're the same thing world over. Whatever company I've worked in, they're the same. Whether is it conversion ratio, is it ability to forecast, is it the there's nothing in the pipeline, is it their just the sheer volume or the value or the average, all those things in the pipe, those are the same. They just vary from company to company in the amount and the intensity as to what those issues are. And the key thing for me is understanding, first of all, what is that in this company I'm going to work with? What are those triggers that are causing the company to either decline or stay flat or not grow in the way they want them to? Once you understand that, then you can go in and say, okay, so here's the priority of things that we need to do in order to bring about change. And generally speaking, on all the companies, I mean, you and I have joked about it before. The first time it happens, it's a fluke. You think, oh wow, that was good fun. That was great,
Right.
But and then the second time,
10 to 25 million. That's not bad.
And then the second time, you think, well, maybe there's something in this. But by the time you do it 3, 4, 5 or more times, you realize it's a process. It's a methodology. It's a structure. It doesn't always work the same way, for sure. But the ability to change and grow a business is fundamentally the same approach, or certainly for me it has been, and it works. It works every time, even to this day, clients that I'm working on this day, and usually within 3 to 6 months, 3 months, you're 3 months, you're just finding out whether you can work with them, whether they can work with you, whether there's opportunity to grow. Because not all companies can achieve that kind of turnaround. Some have gone too far. So that's the sort of first thing where you're just doing the information gathering, the audit thing. But then after that, you start to put these changes in. Usually within 6 months, you start to see a change. I mean, in your world of mine, that's about driving up the sales pipeline. It's about increasing the volume of the pipeline and then starting to increase the capability of the of the company to convert that pipeline. And so that we're talking fairly reasonably large businesses here. We're talking businesses that are 10 to 100 million. I guess that sort of mid cap businesses.
You're slamming your watch on the desk.
Oh. Don't do that.
Don't do
that. So I've lost my train of thought there.
Let me come back because I have a question for you. So all you have to do is go in and draw up a game plan of like, okay, this is the way we sell now, and this is a better way to sell. So here's the plan. Just type it up, send an email to the sales rep, sit back and watch it grow. Is it, obviously there are challenges.
I wish it was like that.
Getting sales reps.
I could do a theoretical sales change plan.
Exactly. Because, and I've given speeches and people have come up and they're like really excited. And then you see them again the next year at the same show and you're like, hey, how'd you make out? I'm like, but usually there's like one or two that come up and actually made the change out of, a couple hundred people, and they know what they need to do. So talk about, the challenges, and maybe in this company, the challenges of like the sales reps are doing it one way and you're like, hey, we got to do this a different way. How do you do that? Is it 2 emails?
No, and the rest. So, first of all, it's wrong to say that they know what they ought to do. Some do, most don't. So when companies are in the situation that they've reached the plateau, let's say that they're not declining, let's just say they reached the plateau.
Right.
And it's been like that for 2 or 3 years. They don't really know how to fix it. That's the problem. Because they're so embroiled inside the business.
Yeah, day to day, their problems. You want to make change, but then server goes down or truck goes down. Whatever it is, there's always problems you're dealing with every day.
I know what they say about consultants that we just hold up a mirror to the company. I understand that. I don't. I mean, the key thing is for me is this expression that when I go into a company for the first 3 weeks, I'm like a man from Mars, because I will see things in that business that no one else sees because they see it day in, day out, and they become blind to it. So you see things. You can walk into a business, and when they say, "Well, okay, how do I fix this business?" and sometimes you can walk in, and even within a few hours of walking around, or a few hours of looking through some spreadsheets, or talking to some salespeople, or talking to the sales manager, you get an idea of what's going on here. They haven't have they got weekly meetings? No, they haven't got weekly meetings. Or they have weekly meetings. What do they do in a weekly meeting? Well, they chat about the weekend and the golf and what they did with the family and so on. But there's no structure to it. There's no. I mean, I have three simple rules for salespeople. For me, in a sales meeting, it's what have you achieved, what were your issues, and what are your actions. What are you doing about it? There's 3 things, and applying that then brings real focus to the sales meeting and the sales action. So no, it's not as simple as saying yes. Of course, there's a formula to it. Of course, there is. But it's every company is different. If you're working in my business has been international businesses. So, if I'm working with the French and the Germans and the Italians and the guys in Chile and Argentina and the Americans, they've all got a different approach, a different cultural approach to the way that they do business. And so, although the logic is the same, the reality and application is different in every situation. And so, one of the things about achieving growth in a multinational scenario is that how do you get all these different cultures working together in a cohesive way so it's a single unit. Once you can get that, my goodness me, the results are phenomenal. I think I told you about the security software company that I worked with in France. Wow, that was the most amazing company. That went from 63 million to 125 million in about 20 months.
Oh, well, that's too long. Slacking. Right. Slacker.
Yeah.
Slacker. But, and I want to talk a little bit more about making the change with the sales reps, because I think you're used to it. I'm used to it. Like we launched, after technology marketing reports, I came back to the reload division and I just started calling customers.
Yeah.
And I started talking to sales reps, and I just heard over and over again, well, how are you managing your leads? Oh, well, they have this company or that company. I hate it. I put fake information in. I think I told you the top people, the best people at converting leads into appointments were using an Excel spreadsheet. And that was the biggest thing that I got out of that, was that they had no tool to manage the data, and they were unhappy. And these systems were not really meant for sales reps that, like, I'll give you 5 minutes to train me on how to use this. Otherwise, I don't want to do it. Yeah. But when you hear people like telling me, yeah, we put fake information in, I hate it. They're trying to force us to use it. But, so that's when I developed our PRM, prospect management tool. And the hardest sell I had was to our own sales team.
Yeah.
Million excuse. But you have to be tough as nails. Like we were developing the software. I developed it in FileMaker, which is like the play school of databases. And people loved it, like when we launched it, but they absolutely loved it. And so then it was going to take a year to develop the real version in SQL. And so I'm prepping the sales reps. I'm like, we're going to spend a lot of money developing this thing. This is going to be our button close. I call it a button close. Did you ever buy a sport coat because, man, look at the buttons on that sport coat. I'm going to buy that, right? Or somebody buys it because of the stripes on a car. And so we made a big investment. The hardest people to sell were the sales reps.
Yeah.
I mean, I just had to beat it into their brains for a solid year. A million reasons why it wouldn't work. And with all of that, with all of my pig-headed determination to get them to change.
They still get it wrong.
And there was only one guy that wanted to do it.
Yeah.
And he started doing it, and I just kept after it, kept the pressure on everyone. Then he did it. Then all of a sudden, he's closing bigger deals. He starts to get 1, 2, and then it starts to snowball. Yeah. And then they're hearing about like doing the demos. We were doing the web demos, and people were blown away. And then all of a sudden, then the next sales rep came on board, and then everybody saw what they were doing. But man, if you lay off the gas pedal for even an instant, you can't go 25% of the way there. Like, let's say it took me 100 hours. Yeah. I easily spent 100 hours because you have to keep explaining the vision to them.
Yeah.
You have to have this like clear vision of where we're going, and you have to tell it to them literally. In that year, I probably told it 100 times.
Yeah.
Because I would just tell it over and over again. And even with all of that, it was like a trickle. I actually had to let one person go because they weren't on board. And they were, we were talking earlier today about somebody with a negative vibe in the sales department. You can't have that. No. And this person just wasn't going for it. And I'm like, we got to part ways. That was a hard thing. It was a great sales rep. And, but if I hadn't done that, the launch would have taken longer. But I can see where people don't want to put that energy in, and, you get about a quarter of the way through and you're like, God, I've been doing this for 3 months and not really getting any traction. But the other thing is, you don't know what they're going to do once you roll it out, right? You don't know what they're doing. It's going to take you a long time to figure out, like, they might be saying, yeah, boss, we'll do it. And then
unless you've got the systems to tell you what's happening. And I think the thing about sales guys and CRM system, we both experienced it. I tried the hammer,
mm-hmm.
You're going to do it, and or else.
Right.
And I tried the carrot to say we'll give you a reward if you do it. Neither of them any more effect than the other. What's really going to happen? I worked once with of the companies I worked. We worked with a sales CRM company that built. These are guys ex IBM. They went off and create their own sales CRM solution. And we had this expression: 3 clicks or less. So first of all, the sales guy, it has to be easy for them to do. It can't be complicated. I mean, my goodness me, I've worked with companies that have got really complex, answer 20,000 questions, Mr. Sales Guy, before we let you go to the next stage. And of course, it fails. So it has to be easy for them to do. But the key thing, it has to be meaningful for the salesperson. They have to see a benefit in why are they doing it? What are they getting out of it? So, you talking about driving it amongst, and I've done the same thing. What I learned in the different business I've been in, broad brushing it, is that in the first 3 months whenever I work with a company, and I would always say to the senior people, believe me, in 3 months' time, your senior guys are going to tell you to get rid of me, because they, in those 3 months, we start to expose all the the inefficiencies, all the things that they not do. And it's not meant individually, not meant personally at all. It's simply unearthing what are the things that are going wrong in the business. I will absolutely guarantee that if when companies have stayed with it, 12 months later, those sales guys think I'm a saint, because all of a sudden life is easier, it's more structured, they're getting more deals, they're earning more commission, and the company's growing. So they go through that pain barrier in the beginning, which, because they're not used to it. They're used to having the freedom to do whatever they want.
Right.
And all of a sudden I'm coming along and saying, no, that's not the way to get the growth. Let's do it in a structured way. And if you do it in a structured way, I absolutely guarantee you're going to get the growth. And of course, then when they do, then they realize it, and then the companies start to grow, and everybody's happy.
And this is such a critical point. I don't want to gloss over it. And I just want to take a moment to say that it takes someone of your caliber as a full-time job to convince the sales team to change in 3 months' time. And at the end of that 3 months, as you said, they're going to hate you.
Yeah.
And you think about it, like for companies like business owners or sales managers or people running existing companies, the amount of commitment it takes to make that happen. I don't want to gloss over it, because I know that in order, because we're always changing, always doing something different and moving forward, it takes so much energy and consciousness. And it's hard sometimes because, things are always, there's always a problem, always distractions and other things. And I think that, if I was to, or maybe, if I was to coach someone who wanted to make change within their company, because without the change, if you don't change the sales reps mentality, because that's what it is. You can't just write numbers down or try to force them. I've seen people try to force them into change through a change in the commission schedule.
It won't work.
And why won't it work? What do they do?
It won't work, because there's more to it than just, I've done surveys of sales guys. Of course, money's important to salespeople and everybody else. But
right.
But if you really get underneath it, and I've done surveys with different sales teams. If you really look at what motivates a sales guy, it isn't the money. Of course, the money is the way. It keeps the score on the door. That's all the money is. What really motivates it, you talk to your top sales guys and you get underneath. You ask them how they do it. First of all, they can't tell you because they know what they do. It'll be because it's that there's something about in the sale. We're all crazy in the sales world, otherwise we wouldn't be in this business.
Right.
But there's something about the passion, the motivation, that sheer joy you get. We've always, you're hero for one day. That day when you hit your number at the end of the month or at the end of the quarter, at the end of the year, you think, whoa, don't I feel good at that moment? And there's something about that is the driver, I think, of the emotive drive, the emotional driver for salespeople. Sales guys, they're like athletes. They want to perform. They want to be really successful at what they do. They want to do it better and better and better and better. And I've never yet really found many salespeople, once you get underneath it, that aren't like that. They want to be better at what they do. And so, if you can show them, you can't say, I want you to go from A to Z in one step, because that's too big a leap. They can't take that in. But you can say, I tell you what, let me just take you to A to C. Let's see what we're going to do to get there. And so little steps and then they get a result.
Yeah.
They think, oh wow, yeah, that's right. So I think I told you the story of one salespeople in this past week. Can you believe? In the past week, so prospect had gone dark, and so it's a big deal. This is like, I don't know, £250,000 piece of business that she'd been working on for the last
$300,000 in revenue.
Yeah, $300,000.
Producer Jeff.
Yeah, so it's $300,000.
Jeff, can you research the current exchange rate for the pound sterling to the dollar? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, let's not talk about that.
No, please let me know, because finally it's not so bad.
I think it's pretty much the same these days. Yeah. So this lady, is this an example? Yeah. So where she'd been going through all the she'd gone through all the steps, doing a great job, getting the customer to the point where she'd done a proposal, customer was evaluating, and guess what? Haven't we all been there? It went dark.
Right.
Yeah.
They don't like me.
Where's the customer? Where are they gone? They're not talking to me anymore. What is it? What has gone wrong?
Someone else.
And so I'm saying to her, well, walk me through it. What, how did it get to this point? Well, they and then you get, the decision makers on holiday. Oh yeah, really? Or we're actually busy. We're really busy at the moment. So, and I just said, well, when was the last time you spoke to them? This is in the last week. Yeah. When was the last time you spoke to them? Well, I sent them an email last week. So I said, no.
That's just like speaking to him, Dave. What are you talking about? email,
When
speaking
did you speak
speaking
to
to a
them?
human being?
So he said, well, no. I sent them an email, and they said they were busy because they're doing their reporting and so on, so they couldn't. I said, no. When did you phone them? When did you actually pick up the phone and talk to them? Well, I didn't like to do that because I didn't like to upset them.
I don't want to upset anyone.
I didn't want to upset them because I didn't want them to feel that I was putting pressure on them. I said, you've got to be kidding me. What is that customer going to do? The customer's going to say, don't darken my door because you're being a pain in the rear end, go away.
Right.
Or they're going to say, actually, we don't need your services.
Right.
Or more likely, what they're going to say, do you know what? You called just at the right time. Because we were just trying to figure out how we're going to get through this. And so anyway, I persuaded this lady to pick up the phone and call the customer. 2 hours later, Larry, she comes back to me full of the joys of speaking. Oh, you know what, David? I just had a really good call with this customer. And the reason they weren't coming back to us because, from the sidelines, somebody had thrown in a wobbler with an incumbent, and they weren't sure whether the incumbent could do it instead of you. And so anyway, and then we agreed that we'd revise the proposition, revise the proposal. We went from a 3-year deal to a 5-year deal, and all of a sudden now they're winning the business. Incredible, absolutely incredible.
And just for a phone call,
so
and
just that
you were in
small,
severe danger. Don't overlook what you just said. The incumbent was trying to figure out if they could come up with their own solution.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
Which you were in danger of losing the deal completely.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but it was just that the point I'm making there is that to motivate salespeople, you just have to show them. Somebody's not. I mean, okay, for me that's an extreme case where somebody's not picking.
I don't think it's an extreme case at all. It happens all the time.
All the time. More and more these days, people. We're both old enough to know that you have to pick up the phone.
Yeah.
Well, I learned it from you. Pick up the phone and talk to them. But more and more these days, people want to do it on email, and of course it's not. There's some research about to come out from Salesforce, I think, where they've done it. They've researched on the way customers want to interact. 63% of customers still want somebody to talk to them on the phone before they want to buy.
And the other thing is, so this is one of my pet peeves. There's research out that the buyer does 90% or 80% of their research before they talk to a salesperson. So you better get a lot of content up. Are you out of your mind? Like, let's say you sell blue widgets or IT services or whatever. Google IT services. There are 30 people on the first page of search engine results. Is that a strategy to load up content after content on your website and on social media so that hopefully out of the 30 options that they have on that first page, that they go to yours, find that content and read up on it? That's not a strategy. Reach out to them. But the opportunity is that 99% of companies will take that and sit down like lemmings, like little sheep, and do nothing except load up content and hope that somebody calls them. Are you out of your mind? It's that if I was an evil person, right? If I was evil, and I could put fake news out to all my competitors to get them to lay down so that they will not pick up the phone and call my prospects, I would do it. It's already done for you. You should be looking at that information like, ooh, we need to get content out. No. You get on the phone and jump ahead of the line. It's an even better situation. But anyway, I'm surprised at that research.
Well, let's take 2 steps back a moment, because you said earlier on about the getting a salesperson or a sales team to change their behavior.
Yeah.
And so that's definitely a key part of it. I mean, I had one company, which we'll probably talk about another time, where it's a global business, and the one business that was doing great, they were already growing 25% a year. The rest of the world wasn't, but this one country wasn't. They were the hardest people to convince that they needed to do anything different, because they were all in their minds, they were already successful. The investors believed they should grow 10, 20, 30, 100 times more, and the investor was right. But so there's one aspect is persuading the sales team to do things differently. But usually, like I say, for me, if I can work with the sales team and you can show them how they can improve their game. So you just understand what is it. If you're my sales guy, Larry, what is it? What are you really interested in? What is it you want to improve? And I kind of understand. If I get to understand that, and I can work with you and help you like a coach, like a mentor, and help you grow. So that's one level. But when you bring about change in a business, if you want to transform the performance of a business, it's way more than just a sales team. The sales team is only one part of it. Everybody blames the sales guys if the sales numbers are down, but of course it isn't. It isn't just a sales team. It's like my guy who hated, and I jest of course a bit, but but he really would hate sales guys, but in a good way. So the sales team is one thing, but often it's not just a sales team. It's the next layers up. It's the management layers, and then it's the senior guys in the organization. It may not be so. Most of my clients I come into them from an investor route. So I'm coming at either investor or the C-suite. So it's that area
at the tippy top level.
From the top. But you can't just be top down. It's be top down, bottom up. But it's bringing about change in a transformation in a business. It's all levels and all areas of the business. It isn't just a sales team. It's the customer service team. What kind of service they're delivering? It's the product development guys. It's the supply chain at the back end. It's their pricing strategies. It's their cost structure. It's all of these things that you bring about to bring about performance change. And of course, the sales team are a key part of that in how they acquire new opportunities. I've just been with a client now literally today, and I found out that this week they've lost 2 of their major accounts. Now, they've only got 20 or 30 accounts in the first place, but they just lost 2 major accounts. So, well, how on earth did that happen? They had no visibility, no handle on those customers it's hard enough we both know it's hard enough to acquire a customer in the first place. Then to let them go at the back end is just criminal. It shouldn't happen. I mean, okay, we all get churned, but generally speaking, if you should be looking after that customer from the day you acquire them, the day you onboard them, the way you wrap your arms around them, you make them feel great about joining your business. And then the in-life part, you're looking after that customer. You're going deep and wide inside the organization. You're doing I think I've told you about my diamond and butterfly.
No.
So I have this. I wish I could draw it for you, but I have this. When you get sales guys, in big companies, you get the salesperson. You imagine a butterfly shape, yeah. So you've got the triangles either side. There's a little point in the middle with the sales guy on one side, and the buyer or whoever the opposite is together, and then behind them you've got their respective organizations. So we've got our product team and our management team and everything else on our side, and they got the same thing on their side. The thing that's wrong with that, of course, is that if they fall out with each other, it's broken. If for one reason one of them leaves the company, sales guy or the buyer, all of a sudden your major account disappears. So, and I'm going to oversimplify this. So you reverse that and you create a diamond. So you still got your account manager or your salesperson at the point, and you still got your buyer at the other end. But in between, you've got all these layers of management on both sides, and your job strategically over whatever period of time is to bring all of those people together. So you try and marry off, as a deliberate strategy. Certainly with big companies and big companies selling, you marry off your equivalent. If you talk to their finance guy, you want to bring your finance guy. So at some point, you create a relationship between them. So over time, once you've done that, if one part falls apart, the relationship doesn't fall because it's only one bit, and you've got such strength around it. Anyway, that's a whole different story about major account management. But so in changing or transforming a business, it's actually getting the C-suite people to understand why is it like this why is this stuck at 10 million. So, the guy at the top of this group, believe me, he's an amazingly clever guy, and he's a self-made hundreds of millions of pounds guy. But he's, for whatever reason, he couldn't see why it was that sales team wasn't performing. And he's not the only one. I've seen it many times. Right. It's because they're separated from that. It's like I said to you. So I went from my ivory tower before I met you, down to the shop floor. And so all of a sudden I could say, "Wow, on the shop, is this what you do when you walk around New York?" And I felt like is it the Sting song, "The Englishman in New York"? Yeah?
Right.
That's how I felt. Yeah.
Right.
But so you have to find a way of bridging that gap between the C-suite guys and what's actually going on the ground, and they have to understand what are the key drivers that they need to know whether their sales team are working, or if they're not working. I don't mean working. Are they working? Are they working in a way which is the most effective way they can? And then the people in the middle, the management, the sales management teams, they also need to understand what is it they, so if I got a sales guy that's not performing and I fire the sales guy, who's at fault? In my world, it's the manager's problem. It may be a lousy sales guy, but generally speaking, it's because the manager hasn't managed that salesperson in a way which has developed the best possible outcome for the salespeople. So you're managing in bringing about change in the business is certainly understanding at all levels where what are those key issues that are causing this business not to grow. That's the starting point. And once you understand that, then saying, okay, well, this is the priority. These are the things that are going to change, and you've got to do that in short time, in as short a time as possible, and then drive the change and demonstrate that the performance is happening. So it's like when when you recruit people. Mm-hmm. My goodness me, I've seen this in smaller companies. I've seen it more than bigger companies. But you recruit a sales guy, and all of a sudden they say, well, he's not performing. So what do you mean he's not performing? Well, he's not delivering the sales. Okay, well, how long has he been with you? Well, he's been with us 3 months, there's no sales. I said, well, how long is your sales cycle? Oh, it's 8 months long. Oh, so, okay, well, that's interesting. The maths don't work somehow. But how are you measuring that new salesperson? How are you measuring his performance? What is it you're asking him to do in that first 3 months of engagement? So the number of times that I've seen companies that have, the HR team will have this induction program. And the induction program means that you'll spend an hour with Larry, the CEO, and I'll have a little chat for him today. He'll tell you about the vision and all that the business. And then you can spend an hour with Fred in the factory, and then an hour with somebody else, and then 2 weeks later you're on the road. That's it. You're going to go and sell. Now, you don't know whether that individual is capable of selling. You don't know whether they're delivering the same message that you want them to sell. So the level of training and induction has to be, so for me, it has to be structured, determined, and they have to prove and demonstrate that they've understood. Larry, the saying, I think I told you, I've got on my fridge, where, if you tell me, I'll forget. If you show me, I might remember. If you involve me, I'll understand. And for me, the sales guy needs to be involved in. So if I want somebody to do a demo, it's not just come and watch me do a demo. It's let me help you do the demo. I'll show you how to do it, but you do it, not me. I'll guide you through it, and then come back to me and as you did back in TMR days, the same thing. We would demonstrate over and over and over and over again, so it got beyond the words. Where the what you were delivering was beyond just having to learn a particular script.
You were trying to hit your lines like a Shakespearean actor.
Yeah.
Because you knew exactly what you were going to say.
Yeah,
so we had, for technology marketing reports, we had a 5-minute step-by-step story that they had to explain, and would go through numbers, and it was so effective.
Yeah.
And we would bring reps in. They had to come here, and just day after day after day, they had to repeat it.
I will never forget that as long as I live, Larry, believe me.
But it worked. We had 15 sales reps. They were doing 4 appointments a day because each sales rep had an inside rep. And every day we were doing 60 appointments a day, 60 new appointments a day.
And what you're describing is a playbook. It's a sales playbook. Now, a sales playbook, I've seen them that are, 300 pages thick, and they're too complicated. Nobody follows them. But you need a sales playbook. It doesn't have to be it's like planning. Planning, was it Eisenhower said, plans are for nothing, but plans mean everything.
Right.
And so a playbook is the same. If you haven't got a playbook, how on earth can you expect to get a repeatable growth? And let us say, well, actually what I learned from Larry the last time was these steps work. So why on earth would I reinvent the wheel? Why not I try this? Now, I might be able to improve on what you've done, and that's great, that's fine. And that's what playbook should be like. But what you described is a playbook. So, if there's a, kind of the starting point for me is what is the playbook? How do you guys win business? What did you do in order to win business? What steps did you go through? If that's that top of the A-frame sales guy who's high performing, you might not be able to describe what he's doing, but you can follow him and see what he's doing and see the steps that he's taking and say, well, okay, that seems to work. So Let's actually put that as the marker, as this is the way we do it, and then grow on it and build on it. And if you do that, you start, surprise, you start to get people performing better. The sales guys feel better about it. They get more motivated, and then it grows. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a matter of if you have it could be a story. Stories are really compelling. Whatever it is about your company, you want to have a consistent message. If you have 10 sales reps and you don't have a playbook or a story or some baseline of exactly how I want you to tell the story about what we do, you've got 10 different versions of like who knows what.
Absolutely right. So you mentioned at the beginning when we were talking today that about this particular sales director, it was that in this one client I went into that was deliberately leading her sales team against the vision of the CEO. Yeah. So exactly. So you've got whoever the leader, whether it's a big global corporate or whether it's an entrepreneurial business, you have whatever that corporate vision is. What is it? What's their raison d'etre? Why are they in business in the first place? And that vision needs to permeate everything that company does. If the vision is that we're going to be, the most excellent at delivering customer service to my customers, that customer at the other end of that chain needs to feel, see it, believe it, and tell everybody else that's what you're about. And so you go from your that core vision through to the strategy, through to the which customers are going to work through to what the sales guys are doing. So if you haven't got that continuity through your sales team, it won't work. You will not grow your business. The other thing I think related to that is we talked about process. So for me, process is like it's like the foundation. I'm going to build a house. So the first thing I've got to do is I've got to build foundations that are rock solid. They're the right shape. They're going to support whatever infrastructure I'm going to put on top. That for me that's lean manufacturing. That's the process part of the sales organization, not just the sales organization, but the sales and marketing and customer support teams. And then, of course, you start building on top of that. So then it's about people. It's about their knowledge and skill. It's about their roles. They've got the right people in the right jobs. We've all seen that where you've got people who are perhaps better at account management being forced into a hunting sales environment. They just go with the aptitude to it, so it doesn't succeed. So you have to get the people with the right knowledge and skill, and then I'm going to tell you the story in a second. But then it's about the unified purpose is the only way I can describe it, that everybody believes in what they're doing and why they're doing it. Don't always agree with each other, right. No business is perfect. But I give you an example of, which maybe we can go into a depth on another time, but there's the security software company that I talked to you about, 9 countries across Europe. We built a business, and of course it was all about, all the processes and the structure and the sales teams and so on. But there was a magic about that business, the one that went from 63 to 125 million. There was a magic about that business. It wasn't really to do with the processes and the structure and the measurement. It was because they were a given. But there was a level of unity that we created across Europe in that company that it drove itself. It became the machine because the people, and it was because they were we created a group of people who supported each other, who believed in what we were trying to achieve. That we had so much fun, Larry, in this business that we worked hard. Crazy hard, but we also had a lot of fun. So we create human relations. And that was really the problem with that company. It was in 9 countries, and they were great people in each country, really clever people. Nobody ever brought them together. So we brought them together in a way that they would, first of all, lots of video conferences, lots of air miles for me. But every quarter, I'll tell you the story again, but it was just, I thought, brilliant. Okay. Every quarter we would have a management meeting somewhere in Europe. Now for 3 days. And so it was over a weekend. So one day was always a work day, maybe 1.5 days, but something like that. And the rest of the time was having fun with each other. So Humanly, what we were doing was taking 12 or 15 people who were running these businesses across Europe and bonding them together, so they became. We got to know each other as people. You know, it wasn't just managers of businesses. We were, real human beings, and with all the likes and dislikes that we had, and so we ended up having. It became a competition between each of these country managers as to who could run the best quarterly weekend somewhere in Europe. And some of the things I couldn't tell you about, but the humour. I mean, from sleeping in Bedouin tents in the North African desert.
Wow.
Was what I tell you. We were doing off-roading in the North African desert. Now you can imagine we were wound up. This was going to be 5-star luxury in a Bedouin tent in the desert, and of course me along with others are all imagining this beautiful sand dunes and glorious sand, and we'd be driving these luxurious 4x4 vehicles. Let me tell you, North African desert is not sand; it's mud.
Mud.
Yeah, mud. And the 5-star Bedouin tent is nothing more than a piece of canvas that's sort of 50 feet long, with a little a little sheet in between each each cubicle, where two guys were sleeping in each cubicle, with somebody else walking around the tent at night to make sure the cockroaches don't come in and get us, or the scorpions, sorry. And but what fun, And so we learned to live with each other. We learned to appreciate each other as individuals, and we did many other things elsewhere in Europe. But the point I'm getting at is sometimes that's the bit that's missed. Now, this guy I told you about, the hated sales guys at the beginning,
right?
So I won't say his name, but he loved his people. Although he'd say he hated sales guys, but actually he was one of the best leaders of people that I've ever come across, because he was passionate about his business. He was passionate about his people. He would help people. He'd support people, and it was permeated right throughout the whole organization. And that's what made that company grow. It's what makes businesses grow. And I mean, there's another. My first time, I think before I met you, the first time I in the conglomerate, I spent 2.5 years in and out of France with one business that we bought, and there was this little Scotsman that was the CEO of the company. We would all of us would have jumped off the end of the world with him, because he was that. He was the kind of guy, you'd go into a factory in France that he hadn't been for 6 months. He'd walk on the factory floor, "Hey Jean, comment ça va?" And he'd be talking about the family and he had that personal relationship. Yeah. There's something very special about people like that. Excuse me. So in business, of course, I can talk to you all day long about processes and structure and skills and training and all those things. But actually, there's a magic part that brings it together, which is about drawing people together in a way in which they share the same vision, they share the same passion. You had it in TMR.
Yeah.
You had that Hoyle in Welsh, we call it.
Yeah. That was an amazing time. And when the times that I've been able to, that I've put the team together and motivated the team, like when we launched InsightPRM, it was so important to me to get that team to be cohesive, to spend the time with the team, to get them motivated, to get them excited about it, because, initially you don't realize it, but then, there's always naysayers within your team, and you don't know what you're battling against, because no one's going to come and tattle. But you should just assume that's there. And then once I figured out where it was, I cut it out, and then, we took off. But, and another story, because it was interesting. We went out to dinner last night and we were talking about this, and, you were explaining that there's, because I'm very analytical and numbers driven, and you were talking about, how important the emotional, the motivational, the humanistic side of this is so important, because these are actors. These are people that are getting on the stage, and they either win or lose deals or get higher or lower margins based on how they deliver their lines. Like they have the value prop, not that you're fooling anyone. You're just trying to effectively deliver your value proposition, and people have all kinds of biases in their mind. They're like looking at you, and like you'd have the greatest product in the world, but if you're not sort of have that extra energy, and I know there are many, many deals that we closed just because our guys were just jumping out of their skin over this over this product. But it is really important for leadership, can have such a major impact on what happens with the sales team. Let's say you're the business owner or division, you're running the division of a company, or you're the CEO, whatever your attitude is, trickles down, and it's either going to hurt or hinder that, or it's going to help that. And you need to put the energy in there, and you also need to take control. I think I was telling you, I gave a speech and at a conference, and this guy comes up to me and he's like, I've got this sales rep. You know, you were talking about rockstar sales reps, right? You've got rockstar companies. I say there's rock stars. That's about 3%, 4% of all companies. And then you got the victims, you know, it's always somebody else's fault, and, you know, they're never going to be happy. And then in the middle, you've got the survivors. And it's always amazing to me that the rock stars are the ones that take the advice. The rock stars are the ones that you study that behavior. Absolutely. And they're passionate about it. I've literally had rock stars who have businesses, and we sell our leads, you know, to competitors, but that's okay. And they'll literally come up to me chest out and go nose to nose. And they're like, I know exactly who you sell your leads to. I don't care. We are going to beat them at every step of the game. And, but you have to make the jump. If you're in that leadership role, you have to figure out how you're going to put that energy in. You need to really, if you don't put the effort in, it's not going to change. Like this guy came up to me, he owned this company, and his number one sales rep, he said she's been with the company for years. She now has a lot of big accounts, so she doesn't need to work any of the leads that come in for that territory. And so the leads come in for this, and she has a good territory. She won't work them, but she's like the little child that isn't playing with a toy, but if another child comes in and tries to play with a toy, she takes it away. He said, what am I supposed to, what do I do? Because it's my best territory, but she's, sort of happy where she's at. And I said, I'll tell you exactly what you need to do. I said, where are you flying back to? I think we were in Orlando or San Diego, who knows? And it's like Cincinnati or Ohio or somewhere. And I said, well, when you go back, before you go into work, go to Staples and get one of those like little legal totes, little boxes, go into your office, collect all your personal stuff, and on your way out, hand the keys to that sales rep, because they're running your business at this point. Like you have to, right? You have to, if you want to achieve that kind of success, and listen, you've done this so many times, like the question that I would have is, how many deals are we squandering? Because the business it was there all along. Yeah. You took them from 11 million to 25 million in 1 year. And then the other company, 60 million to 120 million. David's done this like 14 times the last 20 years. It's almost like clockwork. Literally, that business was always there, and they missed out on it. It wasn't because you tripled marketing, you didn't do acquisitions, you didn't bring on new products, you didn't like triple the sales force. It's just, that's the amount of opportunity that existed within that company that they were just squandering for one reason or another. And if you're, a business leader, CEO, an owner, especially at that level, you have to be bound and determined to say, oh, that's not happening at my company. I'll give you another example. I went to a conference. There were 100 people there. I won't say the name of the conference, but there were 100 companies there. They're the 100 top companies in their industry. So I had my team, because we have like over 100 researchers. So I'm like, call every one of those companies and say that you're, a manager at a big law firm, 100-person law firm. You have a budget for what it is they sell, and you want someone to call you back. David, only 50, I think it was less than 50, around 50, made one phone call. 50 never even called.
Doesn't surprise me.
Shame on them. And when it went to a cell phone at our receptionist desk, she answered it, blah, 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 law firm. Oh, could I speak to Bill? Oh, I know he's expecting your, this is so-and-so from XYZ company. Oh, I know he's expecting your call. You just missed him. That never happens. It's always like, who are you? What's this in reference to, right? So she said, listen, you didn't hear this from me, but call back tomorrow at 3. I know he's going to be in his office. Only 25 out of the 50 made the second phone call. And then every time it went from 25 to 12. So I told him that. And I said, I did a bad thing because these people all know me very well because they asked me to come speak every year. And not one person came up to me and asked, hey, was it my company? That would be the first thing. I would have raised my hand. Was it my company that did that?
Yeah.
So when we have leads come in, we literally automatically an email goes to all the sales reps because they all know which territory is theirs. Yeah. And if somebody doesn't say, okay, I've got this one, everyone knows.
But that's understandable because if it's the reason why they don't want to say is it my company is because they don't want to admit that it is their company.
Go ahead.
If they know that there's something not right in the business, but they don't know what it is. So if you imagine a situation that says it was their company, but they don't know. They don't. I got this thing. I joke with CEOs. So they say, okay, you're on holiday. You're going to go on holiday for a fortnight. You're allowed.
Wait, what's a fortnight?
2 weeks.
Okay.
Okay. You
got
go on holiday.
Producer Jet for.
Thought that was the video game.
It is. It's also a video game, according to the young punk Jet, the producer.
That's like the $1 thing, isn't it?
What is the exchange rate?
I got it up right here.
All right.
It is $1 US is equivalent to 90. 0.90.
Jeff, you did no. Come on, Jeff.
I'm going to England and living it up. I'm used to it being $1.45 per pound.
I'm old enough to remember that.
Jeff, let's go long on the pound.
I'm old enough to remember the pound was $160.
Oh God, I remember that. It was brutal. It was like $300 for a can of Coke from a street vendor. My God.
So we're talking about the
CEO's not admitting, not wanting to know. See, this I want to know.
Not knowing.
Because it confused me.
So, okay, not knowing what's causing it. Now, they would never admit it to you, but then they might then go inside their organization to try and find out, what's actually happening. The difficulty you then got, if you are the CEO of a, I don't know, $30, $50, $100 million business,
which is about the size,
you've got a layer of management underneath that don't want you to know because it's on their.
So they're going to run. They're going to run interference if the CEO comes in. They're going to run interference.
Of course they are.
Now here, go ahead.
Yeah. So you've got to expose that, but in a way that's not. It's not exposing individuals deliberately. What you're doing is showing how that organization structure could improve, could work better. And it may well in that process, like I told you with the sales team I worked with where, the sales director was working actively against the
right.
founder of the business. I mean, that's just a no-no. So in those situations, it did expose a team of people that were subversive in the business, and that obviously had to be dealt with. But generally speaking, the people in the business, they don't particularly want, they're not deliberately saying, I'm not going to let Larry Dillon know what's going on in my corner, but they don't want to tell you because they know it's not performing. If your business isn't performing, and you're the CEO or the CFO or whatever that organization, and you're under pressure from your shareholders to bring about change, and so you're putting pressure down on your organization to change. Your sales guys, your sales leads, they'll tell you what you want to hear, and they'll keep on saying, oh no, Larry, don't worry about it. Next year, because we got this different strategy next year, Larry. We're doing it. We're gonna sell widgets instead of something else, and we're gonna sell it in this way instead of that way. And it's bullshit. It won't change, and so you have to be able to lay out it's not that complicated to lay out the causes of change or performance in a business. So when talking about sales, is it the management? Is it the strategy? Is it the knowledge and skills of the people? Is it the organization structure? Have I got the right organization structure for the kind of selling that we're supposed to be doing in our organization? Is it to do with the the skills of the salespeople in delivering what I'm expecting from those salespeople. You know, like we talked about the farming account managers. Have they got the skills to go in deep and wide? You know, why is it that this client that I've just taken on has lost 2 of their major accounts in the past year? Because they haven't got any account managers looking after those accounts. Yeah.
And this, you know, you don't have the right team. You know, this is an epiphany for me because it's putting it in a way that maybe makes more sense to people. You have to have the right team people together. And you were talking about farmers and hunters. And that's the biggest mistake that I think that I see people make. Because let's say for these companies, and let's back up a second. So these companies are 10, 20, 50, $100 million companies. Based on what you've been able to accomplish and what we see, where we had, that was, you know, if you look at that from the standpoint, our survey, which we've done at least 5 times, I found research of other company, third parties that have done the research. Chilton did the research in the 1970s, found the same thing. 90% of sales leads were dropped or mishandled. There was a woman by the name of Chatterjee that in the 80s did research. She was actually at the Wharton School and found the same thing. 90% of management-generated leads were dropped or mishandled. That the big picture that I want to take a step backwards for is that if you're $1 million company, are you losing $500,000, $1 million, $2 million worth of business that's coming in the back the door and you're missing out? Are you a $10 million company that really should be a $20 or $30 million company? And especially with business to business, when we called in, how do you know that we weren't your next $1 million business, where we're a big company, where we're going to be doing storage and, you know, needing services all the time? So, but what I want to get back to is that the farmers versus the hunters, you need a team of people that are going to work the opportunities, because salespeople, their cadences, they might be like, for instance, you know, some of the deals that you're talking about where you're going after $250,000, $1 million deals, that might tie you up for a month. You might need to be hyper focused on that. Meanwhile, people are calling in and it takes 10 or 20 or 30 attempts to get that good prospect back on the phone. Yeah. Why are you giving that to that salesperson? It should be a separate system where it goes into a queue where they have nothing else to do. But, and you know what, and this is an epiphany, because he talked about a lot of important things that I want to unpack. So you talked about the onboarding and how important that is for making, I don't care what service you're in. If you do a good job with that customer, you don't know if there's other business that, if it's a one-shot deal, maybe it's a phone system. But how do you know they're not part of a division of a bigger company that could navigate you through that system? Or maybe they're growing. Maybe you don't realize that they're growing.
Here's the thing, Larry, on that. It's a good example I got in my head with another technology company, and where they were selling network infrastructure. And it's a big business, but in this business, the sales guy might take 3, 4, 5 months to close a deal. But then when the deal is closed, what could happen is that the groundworks on from the infrastructure end, the last mile, for whatever reason they couldn't install it. So what could happen is you could end up so you win a deal, take a long time to win the deal, and then it could be the customer 3 or 4 months before they saw anything. So and the risk then, and we're talking $200,000-$300,000 deals here, and so at that point the buyer's remorse starts to creep in. Did I really make the right decision? Did Larry mean what he said? All that stuff happens, and if they're not onboarded properly during that period, if they're not kept abreast of what's happening, if they're not told beforehand, do you know what, Mr. Customer? When we do this deal, these are the things. Here's the journey we're going to go on together. Managing the expectations, super important, because if you don't manage the expectations, they're going to manage it themselves. Yeah. And guess what? They are going to assume
a level of service that you never sold them.
Exactly.
If the smart money is assuming that if you don't onboard it properly, they're going to assume a crazy level of service. So, but anyway, go ahead.
I'm sure you've seen it as well. And things go wrong. Of course, things go wrong in business. But if you're looking after that customer and you're keeping in communication with that customer, my goodness me, they can be forgiving. I was in a consumer electronics business I was in that's another story for another time, but that also grew like 800% in this business.
Oh.
But the
Slacker.
This business had the customer loyalty was. I mean, they cared. They loved their customers. In the music world, because they were in the music world. I mean, Jeff and I have talked about music. There's the bond between
producer Jeff.
Producer Jeff. Sorry,
Jeff. Producer Jeff.
I have to have the producer before Jeff, or else
producer before Jeff.
It's in his contract.
So, but there's something about the music industry where there's a level of camaraderie or understanding. So people in that world, they get it. And because my client were, they cared passionately about their customers, and think, my goodness me, things went wrong. We had things go wrong, like for 6 months we couldn't provide product, or they couldn't provide product because some component factory in Sri Lanka had burned down, and there was, they couldn't get the components. But the customers were loyal to them because they stayed in communication. They kept abreast of, they kept them informed of what was going on. And they never lost any customers. And so even though things happen to all companies, if you care enough, if you make sure that communication is ongoing, and it's a journey, like when you're taking the customer, right from the beginning, first time you present me with a marketing qualified lead or a qualified prospect,
right,
all from that point on. As I go through my discovery phases and so on, all the way into the point where you actually sign the deal, and then there's another team that does the onboarding. But my God, you've got to manage that bridge really carefully. So I've had it in another software company where we had business development guys go win the business. They were very good at it. They get to the gate, close the deal, and then they hand it over they throw it over the wall to the customer service guys. The customer's sitting there saying, where's producer Jeff gone? I've loved him for the past 6 months.
Right.
But where's he gone? And he disappeared. And so you have to really be really careful about that. If you manage that whole flow properly, all the way through into the in-life management of the customer, and you're building the diamond thing deep and wide into the organization, and you turn the customers into advocates, and then they find you referrals, it's a win-win for everyone. But it takes effort and time and measurement and understanding to do it. But if you do it, then you get the growth you're looking for every time.
And you have to invest in that. You have to have people. Yeah. I just signed up for a service. It was expensive, and there was a lead nurturer, and they stuck with me, kept trying to get the appointment, As soon as they got the appointment, they were out of the loop.
Yeah.
Right. It was kind of an abrupt thing, but then the sales guy was good. So then I'm working with the sales guy, and this is an extremely successful company, like rocket ship. And then as soon as he got the deal, he disappeared. But then I was getting phone calls and emails from the customer support team. Now, it's not their fault because I've just ignored the customer support because I was able to navigate through the system and figure out everything that I need. But I'm constantly getting emails. I would like to get voicemails as well from the customer support team, but they have this delineation. They have lead nurturers. And this, by the way, here's the secret. If you're a CEO or a business owner, here's the dirty little secret. The best companies and the most well-run companies, and tell me if they have a team that does nothing but manage the lead nurturing, because it's a different skill set.
Yeah.
Because you have to, if a lead comes in, you don't know, especially in business to business, you don't know if that's your biggest $1 million, multi-million-dollar lead. You do not know. It's impossible to qualify that because you never know. It might come in and it looks like a small company, but it's actually part of a big company and it's a part of a division. We've all had that happen, right? So you really can't do that. So you have the people that are making those 5, 10, 15, 20 phone calls into the person that called once and said, yes, I'm interested in your service. Why, for the love of God, if you know that on average it takes 10, which, by the way, fellas and ladies and gentlemen, that means sometimes it takes 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. So, and you never want to give up on somebody that's reached out to you yet. All the research, every time we've done the research, 5 times we've done the research, we found the same thing over the last 10 years. So you've got that team, then you have your sales team, and then you should have a separate onboarding team because it's a different cadence. And do you really want that person to like work forever to try to close the deal? And now he's kind of working with that people exclusive, that new company. That's taken away from time from getting the new. And then you get that roller coaster of activity going up and down, pipeline going up and down. And the smart money is there's a separate team that nurtures leads, separate team that gets engaged, and then a separate team that does the onboarding. And that was another thing that I learned from you, that we need to really shore up and look again at our onboarding team and how we do that. Yeah. Because that's really, especially for what we do, that's really important.
It's the whole the steps that go through from the world that you're in nurturing in the first place, and it's not it's of course it's picking up the phone, but it's a combination of many different media. So
it's sending out white papers, thought leadership, directing them to
add
your
value
website.
To the prospect that you're targeting. It's not spamming people. It's about building up. It's about creating a relationship before we've actually met them. That's what I expect in working with marketing these days. Is so that it's one that I understand exactly who my ideal customer is. Starting point. Who do I want to talk to? And now we can, because now we don't have to go back to the 19. Well, actually, it goes back to I think about 1830 when the idea of the pipeline maybe 1870, I can't remember. But the idea of sending out zillions of emails and spamming messages. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, that doesn't happen anymore. It doesn't have to happen anymore, because now I can say the kind of person I need to sell to, the kind of company I need to sell to is this. The people inside that company, there's the CFO, there's the CEO, there's the manager of this or the manager of that. Their roles are this inside the business. I can define them precisely. I can understand where their watering holes are. I can understand where they go to get their information. Because I can look them up on LinkedIn or wherever. Not me personally, but you understand what I'm saying. So now when I communicate with those people, I don't spam them. I don't try to overtly sell to them. But what I do is I build a relationship, and I give them a value-added communication over time in different ways. So there's different touch points. I don't have to keep on phoning them. I don't have to hassle the living. I don't have to fill their inbox with their company newsletter, which nobody's ever going to read anyway. Or you have to read my case study, because I got this great case study I did with this company down the road, and the CEO of the company is in trouble over here. Couldn't give 2 hoots about your case study. They want to know what you're going to do for them.
Right.
And so it's getting that communication right in the nurturing phase. And then, of course, we're into the but that's part of your world. In the reason you pick up the phone is because you can actually talk to people, and you're researching, you're listening, you're understanding what those people's challenges are.
And I would overlay that on another person that worked with us, my cousin, Drew Kieran.
Yeah. Who's a superstar.
Superstar. Amazing. He will be on the podcast. You don't want to miss that. He is God. But he's responsible. He's a chief revenue officer for a private equity firm, and he's responsible for the revenue for a number of the companies. And he was saying, when you want to post the information and get the content out there, that the watering holes, as you say. And he said, and that's going to get people to come to you. He said, and then you want to marry that with an outbound campaign, because when you put stuff out, you get what you get.
Yeah.
It might be too big. It might be too small. It might be, you go to the smart ones. He says, but then what you do is you define that target market, as you said, and then you do an outbound campaign, because the beauty of an outbound campaign is that you're going to get what you want. He says, when you're pushing content out to monitor what comes in, you're going to get what you get. But when you do an outbound campaign, a very specific outbound campaign, I'm not talking about like you said, like thousands of emails, but very targeted. The people that do respond, the people that hit those triggers, the people that open those emails,
They're the people you want.
They're the one you already know that because they're pre-qualified, like you said. I already know who my target market is, and oftentimes, that's it's always a manageable number, because if it's a big number, then there's lots of revenue to be had, but those kinds of things, and understanding that lead nurturing process is different and separate from the selling process. And like I said, this company that's absolutely killing it has this clearly defined, and I've been through the process, and it was pretty amazing, because the lead nurturer person was able to get right back to me anytime I had anything, because they're in the pocket. They're just sitting there. They're not going on sales calls or having these long conversations with people. But the salesperson, they're a little more difficult to get a hold of, because maybe he's on the phone with a prospect for an hour or two, because he's been on the phone with me for, I think our initial conversation was over an hour long, just asking lots of questions, and they're not able to respond. Where if you have somebody in the pocket doing lead nurturing and somebody responds, they can get back to them very quickly. We had when I was in the commercial moving business, we had an amazing receptionist who went above and beyond. And if someone called and the salesperson wasn't available, she would say, well, what do you need? And they're like, well, Nancy, I remember her name. It was Nancy. It's just like 30 years ago. And she would be so responsive. And every single month, my reps, because we had Nancy, but then we had inside reps. But Nancy sort of like just took it on her own to do this. We had an inside sales team. We had outside sales reps. And so they're always on the road. So customer call in, wants something. This is before cell phones and all that. And every single month, every one of those sales reps would close a deal, and it would go down like this. They would walk in. They never met the customer before, because never talked to them, because the appointment setter made the 10, 20 phone calls to get the person back on the phone, set the appointment, reset the appointment. And then they go out and they would say, you have the deal, David, and it's got nothing to do with you. I want to make that really clear. That Nancy is amazing. Every single time I call, she's nice, she's helpful. Anytime I needed anything, she sent me information, she sent me brochures. It is Nancy and this goes to your point about the onboarding and what that customer experience is. Shame on you if you're, when you think about it, and I'm glad we're having this discussion. I mean, that's the whole purpose of this, is that when you map it out that way and look at your experience, and it's actually more clear to me now that how in God's name do you expect an outside salesperson to be able to give the kind of service that Nancy could? And think about what it took to do that. Very little. And so if you have a lead nurturing team, an inside team that's disconnected from sales, that has nothing to do with sales, that can respond to a customer even the same day, because there are days where, a job has gone awry or a customer has a problem. And I'm sure in all the businesses that you've been in, there could be weeks where that salesperson is in hell because of an implementation, or they're just trying to close a $250,000 deal, $100,000 deal, $1 million deal. You got to be laser focused all day and all along, because it's always rewrite the proposal, come back. It's never smooth. It's never just, oh yeah, we're just going to sign it and wire you the money today.
It's funny, isn't it, Larry? How when you look back at, when I look back at the businesses that I've worked with that have been incredibly successful, and all these hockey sticks that you've seen on the companies I've worked with. And from the outside, you look at it and you say, look at that hockey stick there. I remember once looking at my memoirs, and when I was writing my memoirs, and I looked at this company, went from 63 to 125 million. And of course, I tell the story in a way that, wow, that was really easy. I went from here to here. We had this great fun around Europe. We had all this fun. And then I looked at the detail of my notes, and I see how much arguing we had inside this business day to day. All the disagreements we had. So it's never a smooth ride. It's never honest. When you see it from a distance, and it looks like a nice smooth curve.
This is what I was trying to get out. Talk to me about the arguments. Like, who were the arguments with? This is what I was trying to get to this whole time.
Of course,
it's never.
Nobody would ever agree with what you. Oh, you shouldn't do it that way. You've got to do it this way. Or it was in. Maybe from a different country. No, we're doing it this way now. And so people would argue with you, but you'd win them over. That's the whole point. You'd win them over, and you'd build a team, and you get the level of success that you're looking for. When you get close up, and you see it 3 inches in front of your face, you see all these jagged lines that are actually driving your business growth. But as long as you're growing it, as long as you are actually achieving growth, which is the purpose, then that's fine. It's part of the normal business life. That if you can't have debate, it's not about me or anyone else coming to a business and say, guys, this is the way you should do it. These are the processes you're going to follow. I mean, that's not it at all.
Plan changes.
No, of course, plans change, people change,
you
the
get more
organization
information,
changes, all kinds of things.
You have aha moments.
But what you've got to have is the understanding that there is an underlying flow. There is a vision that the business has got, and a vision, the company wants to hold on that vision or whatever their mission is and drive it all the way through. There are key things in every business that I've worked in that will either hinder or help the growth of the company. And so, you just talked about the nurturing part. So there's a nurturing step, and it's structured. You can measure it. There's the what I call the customer winning bit, the bit after the sales guys picked it up. And we all know the the vagaries of performance through that. But if we don't understand what those steps are, and how you're the CEO of the company, and if you don't understand the size of your pipeline, I call it the shape of the pipeline. If you don't know that as the CEO of the company, then you're in trouble. Because if you don't know where that pipeline is growing or falling, or what the quality is, what the conversion ratios are, and so on, how do you know where the business is going to grow? Once you've won that customer, if you start to lose customers because the onboarding process isn't working very well, and all of a sudden, a bit further down the line, you're losing the customer, and you look back and say, "Oh, maybe it happened because that's that stage in the process." So you've got nurturing, you've got the customer winning bit, you've got the onboarding, you've got the in-life part. So the customer success teams, as they call it, one of my clients, where they're caring for that customer, they're looking after, because they understand the customer, and they're beginning to deep and wide into that organization to understand who the stakeholders are. And then you've got your account management teams who are identifying opportunities to help that customer, and you, of course, but help that customer achieve their goals. And that, of course, is about the whole upselling process. And as part of that, you're then into the bit of the final stage, I guess, is where you're building advocates. You're looking for advocacy and referral from your customers, and obviously try to reduce the amount of churn that you get. So there are clear stages in every business. That it's like if I was going to manufacture, I've done this with manufacturing companies, so you're making widgets, you're making engines, you're making aircraft engines, you're making car engines, whatever it is you're making. I bet you can tell me every step along that way, what every individual and every machine is, how each bit is performing. And they all nod wisely at me. Yeah, of course it does. So, well, why is it any different for your sales organization? It shouldn't be.
Right.
It should be the same. The difference is, of course, then it's we're talking about we're talking about people here, and all the vagaries of people's behavior and motivations and so on. That just makes it more fun. That's just more about getting people motivated to deliver what you want. But that fundamental step-by-step stages in a business, they're the same in all businesses, no matter what business it is. Whether it's in pharmaceuticals or technology or software. I guarantee you and I could sit down and just map out what those stages are, and then start to figure out where isn't it working? It's like a mechanic of a car. You're going to fix your car engine, and you start to look and say, well, why is it? Why isn't that quite? Why are those piston heads sort of cracking the way they are, or why what's going wrong? And you figure out maybe if I clean clean the grit off this bit of cogwheel. The gears will work better. I don't know, whatever it is. And and that's how you improve the performance of the business. The one thing I will say, in the world I'm in and have been for 25 years, is about transforming companies that not all declining businesses. Some of them were just wanted mega growth, but most of them have been businesses that weren't performing quite in the way that the investors or the owners want them to be. Yeah. But I've lost my train of thought here. The one thing about I've lost it. Gone up my head. Completely gone.
That's okay.
Sorry.
That's all right.
What was I talking about growth of a business? Take 5. Take 2. No, gone.
That's all right. It'll come back.
Gone. What was I talking about?
Well, let me just pick up.
Yeah,
it'll come back to you.
It will.
We got more podcasts ahead. So, and we were talking about and as you map all this stuff out, you were talking about all the different things that it takes to make the transformation. And then I'm tying this back into what you said before, because I think it's really important that when I pointed out that it was almost 100% failure, when you look at it, that you should make at least 10 or 20 calls into, a key person at a 100-person law firm that's interested to buy what you sell. I don't think there's anyone here that would say, shame on my company if you should never stop trying to call that guy back. Certainly it's worth 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 attempts to get that person back on the phone. And, you're explaining, and you said that, well, I'm not surprised that no one asked you if it was them. They might have gone back to their company and asked it because it's very complicated. And you were going through you have to have this, you have to have that, you have to have this, you have to have that. And the way that you've explained it to me before, how you get this kind of growth, it's not one thing that represents 90% of the growth. It's 100 things.
Incremental.
It's 100 things that all represent 1%, or somebody described it as death by 1,000 paper cuts.
Yeah.
So you're literally killing the business, right? So how did they literally had a 25 million pound business that they, through 1,000 paper cuts, was brought down to 10 million.
No, actually, Larry, just thinking that through, you're 100% right when it comes to that bit of conversion. You and I talked about the activity level, your model. Activity level, conversion ratio, average order value. So when it comes to conversion ratios, it's absolutely that. It's 1%, 2%, 3%. It's the incremental performance improvement at every step of the way. That's crucial when you've got large deals, long sales cycles. So there was one company that was in 23 countries that had a 16-month sales cycle. And the difficulty with that, of course, it's beyond their year end. So how on earth could they forecast? And it was a problem they had in that they were finding difficulty in forecasting the deals. Long story short, I'll tell you another time the detail of how we made that grow. But we reduced the sales cycle from 16 months to 10 months within a year. And that was critical. But so when it comes to the improving the conversion performance, that's really important. However, there are other things that you and I both know that you can do to improve the performance of a company. So I'll give you an example. There's relatively small business at the low end of my sort of client range, but a facilities company where they had telephone salespeople, and they were selling average deal value £2,000 or $2,000. Let's say it's more or less the same. I'm not listening to your producer Jeff's conversion ratios at all.
Less than $2,000.
That'll just upset me when I go back home. Actually, I should buy some dollars, shouldn't I, and take it home with
exactly.
me. Yeah, I make more money. But they had roughly 2,000, maybe £2,400 average order value, and so their business was all about trying to get high volume customers, and it was a grind for them, and they weren't growing, not really. They were growing a bit, but not really growing. So when I went into the business and understood what they were doing, what they had was a team of people who were, they were loyal, dedicated souls, but not exactly the high caliber salespeople that we work with in the solutions world. They had a product portfolio or service portfolio of multiple different products that they were trying to sell these individual products. And so what they go in and they sell this, they sell one product, which was $2,500. And then once that was sold, 3, 6, 12 months later, they try and sell the next product.
Right.
And so I said, well, that's crazy. Let's actually try to bundle some of these offers together. I mean, it's a really simple thing, but to bundle some of these offers together, we actually employed some higher caliber salespeople alongside the inside sales guys. We changed the offer from being just one to begin with just one. We added 2 or 3 products together and say, here's a bundle, Mr. Customer, and it's £4,500. And then we grew that to be a bundle that was worth £8,000. Then a bundle to was £11,000 or $11,000. And eventually we took that business in under 6 months. We took the business from a $2,500 deal, average order value, to a $50,000 average order value.
That's crazy.
Now you can imagine. So this is without spending huge sums of money on new sales guys or marketing or anything
training.
else. All we did was change the mindset of the people inside the business. So we also went from an annual renewable license to a 3-year renewable.
Right.
So we just changed the mindset of the company to think, actually, this customer needs more of these solutions. Let's sell more of them. And in the beginning, we can't sell that. They're never going to buy it.
It'll never happen. Can't do it.
Oh, never going to buy that. And
Can't
of course,
do it.
the first one that comes along, they do.
They do.
I think, oh, wow. Oh, let's try that again. And then, of course, they realize that it's like, and so that business, of course, grew in its profitability and its size, not by doing anything by, spending shed loads of money on new sales guys, on new systems, on new proofs, just simply rethinking what they're offering. I've got a client now that does the same deal, bigger numbers. I mean, their average order value is over $200,000, but they were selling annual renewable licenses for their software. The problem they had was that every year the sales guys were having, and then they weren't doing it very well, but the salespeople were having to go along and try and resell the deal that they sold a year before. And it's such a short period of time.
Right.
In a 6 or 7 month sales cycle, it's an absolute nightmare. So all we did was we said, well, you know what? We'll change it to the baseline is going to be 3-year renewable deals.
Right. Won't work. Impossible.
The people inside, the sales guys, oh my goodness me, the headache. You're
killing me.
They're never going to accept that. You can't do that. No. But they weren't just the sales guys, actually. It was the senior management people too that in this business said, you can't do that. Nobody's ever going to buy it. We've been in this business a long time. And right. Let's try it. Let's just try it, shall we? And so the first thing that happens, of course, they do the first 3-year deal. And everybody said, I said, well, that's pretty good for your valuation, isn't it? If you've got,
right.
It's what we did in the technology business. And so, excuse me, they go from 1 year to a 3-year. This last week, I've helped them close 2 deals, 5-year renewables. So all of a sudden, so they haven't changed the, they haven't changed the average annual value very much. But what they've done is changed the lifetime value of that customer.
Right. And the sales
5 times.
Yeah, and the salespeople are going to wind up selling a lot more. The same number of
right.
sales reps.
Yeah.
And that goes back to which we have a video coming out, producer Jeff, on where I'm going to do a demonstration of the sales formula that drives all of this. We've talked about this. It exactly describes what your sales are going to be, what your incremental sales are going to be. And one of those components, it just tells you the power of the sales formula, which is just basically the number of appointments you go out on or how many new pieces of business you bid on, your closing ratio, and what your average deal is. And sometimes it's a matter of looking at that average deal and saying, is that reasonable, or can we double it? Can we triple it? Because you'll never double and triple your to double or triple your closing ratio to double sales. Good luck.
Now, the reason you look at, you're absolutely right. The reason you look at the conversion ratio is, like I said, if it's a high value business,
Right.
high average order value business in the first place.
Yep.
You know, if I'm already doing a $250,000 average order value, to jump that up to $1 million, whatever that is, $1 million business, that's quite hard to get to that.
Right.
And so, and it might be that, like this other company, you know, with 16-month sales cycle. So the best bang for my buck in that business, every business is different, but in that case, the best bang for the buck is, let me shorten the sales cycle. That's about efficiency and effectiveness inside of the sales guys inside that.
And that's
process.
the first step to making any of these changes, just verbalizing it.
Yeah, of course.
I'm going to change the sales cycle from 10 to 16.
Yeah.
That's the first step. Just change.
Well, how are you going to do that then?
Okay.
So,
get it in your head, but then also, like, and again, this is what I don't want to gloss over this. There's a lot of arguments, a lot of battles to make that change take place. Like you said, you look back, because I knew, that's why I was trying to dig earlier. I knew there was more to it, because I know from myself trying to make change within the company, it's just that, and their salespeople are the hardest people. Then you take it to market and everybody's like, this is great. This is awesome. You know, the salespeople, the people in your own company are the hardest people.
Yeah, it's the people in the business.
Sell.
Yeah. It's not just the sales guys. I mean, you get, you know, like I said, the
CEO, management,
it's all
operation, even operations jumps in.
But you've got international cultures. So this one company was in 23 countries. I should never forget it. The other thing that happens in these big companies, whether it's the IBMs of this world, I'm sure it happens there as well. But in my world, these sort of mid-cap organizations, is that the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. So and by that, what I mean is you can get.
Oh, even in the smaller companies, David, trust me.
In these multinational businesses, so for example, in this one company, the German, in this group, the German country, they were absolutely brilliant at account management, really, really clever. They dug deep and wide, they had great systems to look after the customers and so on. Over in Argentina and in South America, they were absolutely phenomenal at finding new customers. At the new, nurturing new customer acquisition and so on. Do you know what? They didn't talk to each other, so they weren't sharing because we ran what we call the best practice program in that company, but they weren't sharing what was good over here. Well, maybe we can do that elsewhere in Germany or in France or in Italy or Spain or wherever, and just by bringing people together. You start to share that best practice, and of course, 2 and 2 then begin to create 5 in the organization, and you get that level of growth.
And so I always try to simplify and visualize, the concepts to make it easy so that people have something to walk away with that's easy. So if we look at the components of the process, you've got the lead nurturing, right? That's a different skill set. It's a different mindset. You have to have, what's the process for that? What are the right people for the lead nurturing process? Because it's good sales reps. They hate it. They hate calling. They hate having to make 10, 15 calls to call into a customer. And sometimes they'll say, well, I called them. They haven't called back. And we're like, well, they're the customer. Well, then it's not a good lead,
I called him and he wasn't there.
Why aren't they calling me back? I'm like, I don't know. I'm not a psychologist. Stop it. And then you have your sales team, and that's where you get into all those metrics of this. Like you picked it all apart. Like it's all those stages. Like David goes through these. We'll talk about that in another podcast. But these stages of the pipeline, he talks about the shape of the pipeline, which we'll get into in another podcast with David. What's the conversion rate from stage 1 to stage 2 to stage 3 to stage 4, which I haven't seen a lot of people do it that way. But again, this is part of the process that he uses to get these meteoric results. We're not talking about a 10% or a 20% or 50% increase in sales. We're talking 100, 200, 300, 400% increase. So you've got these 3 parts of your process, the lead nurturing, which hopefully, tease that up for the sales team to get engaged with the prospect. Then you have that middle part of the process, which is closing the deal, winning the business, and monitoring the pipeline and getting all those right metrics. And then the other thing that you really shed a light on that I forget about is the onboarding. And I want to talk about the onboarding for a second, how important that is. And you discussed it. And I think having that handshake between the salesperson and the onboarding team, because you don't want the salesperson tied up too much in the onboarding, because they'll make you more money if they're out seeing another prospect. Do you really want them to spend 3 days with a customer that they've already closed, or spend that 3 days closing 2 more customers?
But that sales guy sets it up. So this,
yes.
So in the solution selling world anyway. Let's assume you've got one of these. You're in a business where it's a $200,000-$300,000 deal. You've got 6-7 month sales cycle. You're going through all the stages of good discovery at the beginning, and you go through maybe some demo, and then some customer evaluation, and so on and so forth, till you get to the end point where they've agreed to go ahead, and then you're going to hand them over to maybe the customer engagement team, or whatever you call them. Now, if you're selling, and I've had this recently, where if you're selling complex solutions, complex software solutions, for example, or systems, where the specification of what the customer wants is absolutely critical to the delivery. If you'd sales guy, now bear in mind the sales guys aren't the best project managers. They're not the best.
They're the worst.
They're not. Yeah, exactly. So, but if you expect the sales guy to do all that work, all that scoping work, and then hand it over, the number of times I've seen it where the customer's expectation, well, your sales guy said it would do this and this, and all those widgets that you don't actually produce. Maybe the customer made it up, but maybe they did. I don't know. Right. And then the customer's in the in-life bit, and they say, well, this isn't what I ordered. This isn't what you promised. This is, where is producer Jeff? He used to love me for 6 months, and now he's not here. And he definitely told me it would do this, this, and this. And so there's one critical bit in that stage between the business development sales guy bringing the deal to the party, the customer engagement people picking it up with them, and there's a bridge between those two things, which actually, guys, let's just sit down together and be really clear about what your expectations are. So so now in this one software company I'm working with, they've now got to, as part of the project, they have to go through a scoping. They do it for half a day, but they do a scoping session with the customer, with the BD guys, and with the engagement people, to make sure that both sides are very clear about what's going to be delivered in their solution. And then there's no debate then about what's in scope and what's out of scope. Yeah, so they manage it through well, and then the customer is clearly happy. But so it's an important part that often people forget, that the skills of the BD. It's like you said, the BD person usually isn't the best lead nurturing person on this earth, because they don't like picking up the phone in the first place. Right. And there's many a story around that. But equally, the salesperson isn't necessarily the best person to do the scoping. He's not the best project manager on this. So you have to bring other people into the team, maybe earlier in the process, maybe in the discovery stage, but certainly by the time you get towards the end of that sales cycle, where it's crystal clear what the customer's expectation is and what you're going to deliver them. And then afterwards, the customers has been onboarded properly, and then they're engaged properly, and you get a great relationship.
Yeah, and and it doesn't have to be a big company to have that transition. We were in the commercial moving business, and one of the problems that would always come up, because we would give flat rates.
Right.
So the sales rep would walk through. Now, this was back in the 80s, they would just walk through with a piece of paper, and they would say, because there wasn't really, for residential, there was like a checklist, like living room, dining room, and all the different things. It just had a check mark. Was there a dining room table? How many chairs? But for commercial, there really wasn't anything. So the guys would just write on a piece of paper, okay. And then he would say, who's moving the plants? Oh, the plants stay. Okay, so we'd write down the plants stay. And who's moving the pictures? And, he'd go through and document everything, but it's on this long written piece of paper. And then we would get into these toughs because the moves were usually on the weekends. Sometimes the reps couldn't be there. And then the customer's like, well, Alex said they were going to take the plants and the pictures, knowing full well that they told Alex they weren't, but they're realizing Alex isn't here. So we had a big meeting. I had 3 companies, DC, Baltimore, and Philly. So we got the whole team together, all the sales reps together. And we're like, all right, let's make a list of every potential item, plants, file cabinets, long carry, all this. So we had a list of every possible item that we would, that we sort of got screwed on by the customer. So then we made up this 3-point checklist, and it would say plants, and it would say, C for the customer was responsible, D for Dillon moving was responsible, and NA was not applicable, right? So there were no plants. So they would literally go down and check everything off. So as soon as he would say, hey, who's moving the plants? So they would say customer. So he would check off the customer thing next to the plant and next to each of the items at the end of each page, because I think there were 3 pages of every possible thing that there was. The customer had to sign. So when the foreman had these 3 pages and he knew that plants were on page 2 in the middle of the page, item number 80, they would say, well, Alex said, well, is that your signature, ma'am? Well, yes, it is. It says right here that you're going to move that. Oh, yeah, that's right. But the point is that it was a consistent problem that you either, the customer's trying to take advantage of you or they forgot. And meanwhile,
because it wasn't made clear in the first place on both sides.
It wasn't documented.
Yeah.
So,
certainly in the software world, or they hadn't thought it through. They didn't. I mean, how many times I've done it. I've done it as a sales leader, and they brought a CRM system. And I said, oh yeah, I want to do this and this and this.
Right.
And then they said, okay, fine. So the IT guys go, and then 3 weeks later saying, oh, do you know what? It'd be really good if we could do this. And so you keep on changing the rules of the game, and they hate you for it. But that can happen. And so unless you go through that, that detailed process to avoid that.
How do you figure out, how do you, when those problems come up with a solution? Yeah. You should be like, if it's a big problem that causes you to lose a big customer or something, you should sit down and say, okay, this is never going to happen again. And that is adding to that process where so many companies just don't address it at all. And they keep making the same mistakes over and over again. And then there are companies that do make these improvements, but that's, and that's piece of the puzzle, which, not to interrupt you, I just want to go on this train of thought. One of the reasons that's important is that other part of the puzzle we were talking about over the weekend, the other activity level closing ratio and average sale, which is from after they become a customer. Yeah. And it's not just for companies that you can sell deep and wide, it's for referrals. And I'll give you an example that ties in all 3 of these processes. We, one of our customers got the lead for a company that was moving. They had lead nurturing fella that was really good at following up on leads, really profitable company. Then they had sales reps. And then they had folks that would, the supervisors that would take care of the job. Called in, got the lead, called the company that we spoke to 2 days before. They were like, yeah, we're definitely moving. He calls them, and this guy never gets fooled. They convince him that they're not moving, like they lied to him. Yeah. And so he disqualifies it in his CRM. But what I told them to do is actually at one of these conventions that I speak at, I said, send direct mail to every lead that you get from me or every lead that comes into your company, because you might not be able to get in touch with them. But if you send out direct mail, it just has to have a picture of your company. You sell IT services or you sell phones or software, whatever it is, just get it in front of them.
It's a touch point.
It's just a touch point. So fooled this guy. 2 weeks later, the same person that lied to the lead nurturer calls up and says, hey, I'm moving my warehouse. Do you guys move warehouses? And it was the owner of the company happened to get the phone call. So he went out. Turns out this is a massive deal for movers. It was $176,000. I'll never forget. And he got the job. He supervised the job himself, did that customer service, because you can look at that from the standpoint of like excellent customer service and follow through. And the guy was so happy with that piece of business that they got a follow-up job, no other bids. The first one they had a bid with, that one was $350,000.
Yeah.
So it's $500,000 worth of business, which is mammoth in the moving business for a postcard.
Yeah.
But because they had the process in place, and I guarantee you, if they didn't send the phone card, if they had given the rep to a sales rep, and if they didn't follow through, if he hadn't been in on the job, because he's like, I saw this as an opportunity, so I went in to do the job. So if you look at that from this excellent customer service, that they wouldn't have gotten that follow-up piece of business. So if you have all those pieces of the puzzle in place, to your point, this is how you take companies from 10 to 25 million,
right.
because
Exactly right.
that one thing, because who would argue with you if you got a lead from us, or a lead calls in, or you get a networking lead and you call back and they tell your sales rep, we're not moving.
Yeah. It's what I think I described to you as where we talk about growing the S curve, the sales curve, so you shorten the sales cycle, you improve the performance, and you get that acceleration in sales. But then, as you rightly say, what you're doing is doubling up on that curve, because then now I got the customer, now I'm repeating it.
Go get more business, right?
I'm repeating it, it's a constant growth program,
right? Yeah. Don't give up after the sale is made. That's not it. Like you can lose so much business if you do a bad job for that customer. And sometimes a bad job is just, you didn't manage the expectation. You didn't have the little checklist to check off. Like they said they were going to move the plants and the pictures, and when they came out, the driver gave me a hard time because, they said they weren't supposed to move it. Now they're pissed off, and now you're not going to get that referral. Now that turns into $176,000 job, and it stops there. And God knows how much more business. And we have customers almost every single month that'll call us up and say, because, we coach them on the lead nurturing process. Like, you have to be bulletproof, because these customers, they're like, well, why would they lie to us? I'm like, I don't know. Go hire a psychologist. It's just like, it happens. Yeah. Who cares? What does it matter?
And you know what, Larry? I just remembered what I was trying to.
I knew it would come up. Go ahead.
That's why it's exciting to say. So it's a really simple thing. So we talked about the, these stages from nurturing through to customer winning, through to the onboarding, through to in life, and then advocacy and referral. And one of the things for me is the customer, not the sales journey, the customer journey. We need to understand what that customer goes. So when I work with teams of salespeople, I say, okay, try to put yourself in the mind of the customer. What is it that customer's doing? Why on earth is the customer even thinking about buying your kind of services? What's happened in their world to trigger that? And so we walk through a customer journey. And so, and often what can happen, the sales guy is so myopically focused on trying to sell. I've got to hit my numbers this month, that they forget about where the customer is. And so they diverge. I've got a disc diagram. I can show you this, so they diverge. So you get the sales guy going in one direction, the customer going in another direction, and guess what? They sent them the wrong marketing material, the wrong communication, whatever it's. So it's just not hitting the mark with the customer, and they don't get the sale. So you have to try and work in a way in which your sales journey is adding value to the customer journey. And so when you're going through those different stages, so if I'm working with you as a customer, I'm going to tell you what that journey is from early on. I can say, when we work together, Larry, these are the stages we're going to go through. This is how I'm going to help you. So when you reach this stage in your, whatever it is you're doing inside your account, I can help you move that, because this is how we work. We go from here. And when you get to the onboarding, these are the team of people, just before onboarding, we're going to do a scoping session. These are the people, there's a senior guy here that's going to get involved, and so they know what that journey is ahead of time. And then there's no surprises. They're with you on all the way through it, and they feel more comfortable about the whole process. Whereas if it's, I'm not going to tell you what's happening next. So when it happens, I'll tell you then, and you just kind of open the curtains and think, I wasn't expecting that.
Right.
So you help the customer on their journey with your solution, and that's the key from beginning to end. That's what I was trying to remember earlier on with the process thing.
I figured you forget about it, and then you'll come back to it.
Absolutely.
So, Jeff, how are we doing on time?
We are
Not that it
hitting
matters.
2 hours and 5 minutes.
Wow.
I thought, wow,
Wow.
crazy.
It's
Amazing.
actually been 2 days.
Amazing how much you can talk for, isn't it?
Yeah. No, we should have just planned for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So we could just try to jam all that into 15 minutes.
That
Well,
was good.
Well, listen, get close to the mic.
Okay,
We're not done yet.
We're not done yet.
We're wrapping up here.
Okay.
We're still taping, Dave. So
Come on, you're still doing
don't
that.
relax.
Yeah.
All right. So,
Oh, I'm so excited.
well, Dave, I'm glad that other people the story between how David and I met was I had a guy that was running my company, Wendover. How many years ago? Like early 90s, mid 90s,
Yeah.
mid 90s. Guy
Mid-90s.
Bob Paxson, great guy. He calls me up. I forget where I was at. He says, "You need to get on a plane, and you need to fly to London, and you got to meet this guy David Parry because you two nut jobs think alike, right?" So I got on a plane and we met. I think it was somewhere outside of London in like one of these old pubs,
Yeah.
and we're sitting in the parlor or whatever you call it. There's
In the bar.
There's a little coffee table, and we're writing stuff down on
table
napkins.
napkins.
We're writing stuff down
I
on
remember
table
it.
napkins. We're like 90% of leads are mishandled or dropped, and if you assume this and assume that, you could take a $10 million company to 30 million. We're like, that's crazy, but that's what the numbers said. That order of magnitude was somewhere between 2 and 3, and then
we did it.
Then you did it, and you've done it again and again and again. And if anyone takes something away from this, I would really, if you're a $1 million company, are you really, how much is escaping because of the onboarding? Like, just think of that one case where $175,000 deal led to 350. Now that was just the beginning, because that was obviously a big company. It's probably done more business than that. But all of these little things that you put together, that you tighten up from the lead nurturing, right? The right people in place from lead nurturing, managing all those numbers, managing the numbers in the middle, that transition onto the onboarding, the importance of the onboarding all of these are multipliers, right? Go ahead.
Yeah, but you're right, Larry, and I'd forgotten about the table napkins, but you're right, we did all that stuff. I think what's really important to understand in the world that I'm in, it's taking the helicopter view. Yeah, I have to take the helicopter view of a business, because if I delve too deep into the detail, I will get lost amongst the trees like everybody else. It's like, I think I told you the funny story of when I was a student a long time ago, and I bought a car for £15, which is like $15.
$15.
Okay, maybe
a little less,
maybe
$14.92.
Yeah, you had to do that. But and the car didn't work. And my brother, an old Ford Anglia, and my brother and his mate, who were tool makers and engineers, they decided they were going to tune this car up for me before I got it. And so what they shaved the head of the engine, and so they cut down the piston, the piston reach. And of course, this car had an amazing engine, and it would go super fast. But the car itself wasn't built to go like that. So in a business, I'm using the analogy of that. So in a business, if you don't fix as it got four wheels, and do the four wheels go, are they all got tires that are properly properly treaded? Have they got the right suspension to go along with that tuned up engine? If you don't see the helicopter view of the business, then how on earth can you hope to improve the whole performance of the business? So although you might stand at the top, which I do, so I start helicopter view, I stand at the business, I do my audit, so I go through an online audit of a company, and then you understand at a fairly high level what are the things that are driving this company, what don't look like they're working right, and then you can get into looking. Okay, well actually it's these two areas here. It is to do with the onboarding, and it's to do with. What do you mean you don't do any scoping? There's no scoping document from in a complex, and this is for real, in a complex software company into your developers, and it goes wrong. Well, there's a surprise. So maybe we fix that bit first, and maybe your sales guys aren't following up with leads. Perhaps they get leads from the telemarketing guys, but why are they still sat in the discovery, in that qualified first meet bit?
Right.
And there's a huge gap. So it's about understanding the whole picture of a business. And I know that I'm anal about that, Larry, because for me that's how I think you can get that, bring about that substantial change in the business, because and it's like the CEO. The CEO can't possibly get involved in every detail into the business. Well, he shouldn't in the first place. But he needs to understand from a top level
picture.
What are the things that are actually driving his business. It's back to you're on holiday for a week or 2 weeks. What are the you're allowed one phone call into business, 3 questions. What are your 3 questions?
Right.
To know that your business is going to still be there when you get back.
It does boil down to we'll discuss that in a future thing. Well, David, how can people reach you? What's your website or your email address?
So I have a website which is called Smart BRG. Now the BRG is Business Recovery and Growth. So it's Smart Business Recovery and Growth, smartbrg.com. And you can contact me through that through inquiries at smartbrg.com, or you'll find me on LinkedIn, David Parry, or David Parry 2. I think I am on LinkedIn. Or you call me on my cell, which is it's 447779225116. I'm sure we'll put that on the podcast.
Yes.
At the end, yeah. But listen, if we can help people, Larry, then please do reach out to us. It's great fun. It's enjoyable, and I think you'll find that we can make it fun for organizations and bring about the kind of value that your C-suite and your investors are looking for.
Yeah, and it is what gets us jazzed. So this is Larry Dillon from Chief Revenue Officer podcast, signing off. Thank you very much,
Thanks, Larry.
David.
Appreciate it. Great to talk to you again.
Great to talk to you.
We need the applause.